You're listening to the Piano Parent Podcast with Ashlee Davis, episode 344. Hey there, and welcome to the Piano Parent Podcast. I'm Ashlee Davis, a longtime piano teacher and parent with my husband of 4 mostly musical kids. As parents, we spend so much time trying to encourage and motivate our kids. We wonder if we're doing the best things for them. We second guess our decisions, and we worry if we're going to scar them for life. While you focus on encouraging your kids, I'm here to reassure and inspire you. I'll be here every week with practice tips, inspirational teacher interviews, and musical topics to help you impress your kids with your musical knowledge. Parenting is not for the faint of heart, but it's much easier with support, and you have come to the right place. Good morning, piano parents. Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast today. I know that summertime can be just as wild and crazy as the busy school year. That's why I'm bringing back a few short-form episodes this summer. Last year, I called these bite-sized topics, What Would You Do? And you can listen to those episodes if you scroll back through your podcast player to number 296 through 303. You can also find last year's episodes by typing in pianoparentpodcast.com/ and whatever number you'd like to listen to from 296 to 303. This summer, the mini episodes are called Parenting Do-Overs. So often on social media and in my interviews with guests, we try to put our best foot forward. And that's as it should be. We want to offer professional, succinct information that will be helpful to listeners. The reality is, most of my guests, in addition to being teachers, are also parents just like you. They're in the trenches with busy schedules, trying to keep up with practice routines, dealing with tired and cranky kids or moody teenagers. We're all doing the best that we can, or at least trying to. With a few guests from the previous several months, after we finished the prepared questions, I surprised them with one final unrehearsed question. These guests offer their nitty-gritty, real-life parenting experiences of times they missed the mark and would like to have a parenting do-over. To be fair, I share a few of my own parenting doozies. And actually, in this episode, you get to hear from my second son, third born, Austin, who shares his view of one of my parenting doozies. The title of this mini episode is Make Space for Your Child's Experiences. And you'll hear that from Austin's perspective, as well as from my guest, Ashlee Young. Ashlee's full episode is at 324, and I'll talk a little bit more about that after this mini episode of Making Space for Your Child's Experiences, a Parenting Do-Over. But I have to think about what I'm gonna say.
Sure.
I'll tell you the question, and to make it fair, I have been giving an example of my own parenting, and then
Sure.
that gives you time to think about your parenting. So I'm trying to think.
And just so you know, there's like no world in which I will be like thrown off by a question or offended by any questions. I'm so open.
Well,
so just, ask and we can go from there.
I'll just go ahead and tell you the question, and
Sure.
But I'm trying to think of an example for myself, especially that would relate to your 3.5-year-old.
Sure.
The question is, and I've been asking guests on the podcast, if there is, because of parents listening, I think it's helpful to them when they hear that other parents have made a mistake. Where we all know we're not perfect. And one of my biggest fears with my own children is that I'm going to make some terrible mistake that is going to cost them years and dollars of therapy. And
yes, because we're all going to do it, right?
Yes.
Even if we try not to. Yes.
And the other
Definitely.
aspect of that is that I think it's good for our piano kids, for our children to know that we recognize when we make mistakes. We do the best we can.
Yeah.
We want the best for our kids, but we're still human and we still make mistakes. And it's nice for them to hear us say, "Ugh, I blew it. I'm so sorry. I messed up.
Yeah.
And so the basis of my question is, can you think of an instance with your child that you wish you had a do-over? Something that, I did it this way. And your daughter is 3.5. So there may be a lot of things as a new parent that you're thinking, if there's a second kid, whenever there's a second kid, I'm going to do all of the things differently. And to be fair, I try to share a story of my own, but I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, no worries.
My son is in the other room. Austin, do you have an example of a do-over that you wish I would do? Yes. No, just as a parent. Come over here so Ashlee can see you. This is Ashlee. Ashlee, this is my son, Austin, who doesn't live here, but he's been home for lately.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Oh, you can't hear what she's saying. I'm sorry.
I hear what you're saying.
She said it was nice to meet you.
Oh yeah, nice to meet you.
Likewise. I mean, there's probably loads of things, but it's just one of those.
Just say it that way.
No, I'm just saying, like you were saying.
I was like, I'm just shocked he's not just rattling off a list. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Not because of you, because of,
Right. This is your opportunity.
My opportunity. I don't know. The biggest thing when it comes to at least the piano lessons, is just the moving us around so much.
Okay.
So not having a consistent time.
Okay. So that'll be good for you, Ashlee, if you're thinking of teaching your own daughter whenever she gets old enough for piano lessons. A lot of teachers hire out other teachers to teach their own children. I was either too lazy or too cheap to do that. And I don't have time to run around to drive my kids to other places because I'm home teaching piano lessons. But if a kid ever needed a different time, or, I can't make it to my lesson on Tuesday. Well, sure, you can have my kids' time on Thursday. And so you guys kind of got shuffled around. I apologize.
It's okay.
Okay, thank you. Now scram.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you too.
Are you leaving?
Yes.
Okay. Goodbye. I love you. Be safe.
I love you. Put the dog in the kitchen.
You did. Okay. Thank you. Text me when you get there.
I'll try.
Okay. Okay.
I love it.
That's perfect. I hope the microphone.
Yeah, that was a great example. So I will share. So the thing that initially popped into my head, it's an emotional thing. It was a sad thing. It was a really sad thing, but I'll share it with you because it's an example of a time where I acted in the moment of responding and kind of reacting to the situation before taking a minute for myself and really thinking about what it meant. So my daughter, as I mentioned, she's 3.5. Her name is Pippa. And I don't remember what the conversation was about, but she said to me, I don't like myself.
Oh.
And I slipped internally. I was like, oh my God, she's 3.5 and she's saying she doesn't like herself. What does this mean? How is this going to impact her for the rest of her life? Have I done a bad job of making it so that she has no self-confidence or no self-love? And inside I was kind of very much spiraling out of control. And so in that moment, I kind of went into a helicopter parent of we're going to solve this right now and we're going to fix this. We're going to come up with lists of reasons that you're amazing. I want you to say it. I want you to repeat after me, and kind of really, I would say I overshadowed the experience with my own insecurity of what it meant when she said, I don't like myself. Now, later, I Googled, of course, I went down the internet rabbit hole and I was looking up what this means and all of that. And I did discover that at age 3.5, developmentally, if children don't feel well, so if they're sick or if they had a bad experience, they don't know how to describe that. They might not be able to say, my ear hurts or it feels like part of my body is aching. They'll just say I don't like myself.
Yes.
Because they're feeling something in their body or they had a bad experience. That made a lot more sense. And immediately made me wish that I had a do-over, because I do think part of my goal as a parent is to make space for my child's experiences and to allow them to be their own person that has room to describe what's going on in their world. And I want to see her in that. I want to see her world. I want to understand her world. And so I think when she said that, instead of going into the mode of what I want to do, which would be maybe create space and ask some clarifying questions and, talk to her about it, or take a minute and look it up and see what it meant, I panicked and started kind of word vomiting and like trying to solve that, what I perceived as the problem, before I created space for her to explain the problem more. And so I think that was a really big lesson for me going forward in parenting, because I think there will be many more situations where she says something that might be a little bit alarming or that takes me off guard or catches me by surprise. And to just really remember to find that inner calm and take a deep breath before I react, and before I try to solve that problem immediately, and really hear her and her experience. And I think that's so important for us parents to do. And
make sure you're solving the actual problem, not the problem your brain just exploded.
Exactly. Like not the problem that I created in my head about what she said. Yes, exactly.
Yes. And that's so beautiful. And really articulate when you understand her 3-year-old mind. I don't like that this is happening or whatever. So good. That's a beautiful story. And I think
good. I hope that was appropriate.
Well, it makes me think too, just along the lines of piano parenting, when our kids are involved in some piano audition or something like that, because our brain gets a little nervous and we might think, are they prepared? And what's going to happen if they don't do well, or it's a mean judge, or then we project all of this onto our children, trying to reassure them, but we're putting thoughts in their head that didn't occur to them until we mentioned it. So,
right. And especially because music, I think growing up as a kid that did music and now being on the other end of it, like it's such a personal and emotional thing. And so I do think if parents can take my lesson and maybe learn from that as related to music with their children and piano lessons, of creating space for that experience. And, if your kid says they want to quit piano, not immediately rushing to solve the problem, but really listening and asking questions and, understanding their experience, I think is so important, because in life, whenever we have more information, we can make more informed decisions. And so gathering that information about our children before we rush to try to solve things that might not be the issue, I think is just a really good lesson.
And that is a good lesson for all of us. And I appreciate it so much, Ashlee. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you.
I really enjoyed visiting with Ashlee. And if she, as a brand new mom with a little 3-year-old, Pippa, if she can learn from some of my mistakes, that'll be so good. I know that I have learned from watching parents, moms that are older than me, who have children that are older than me. I remember the days whenever my kids were younger, and the way I parent them now as adults is different than the way I parented them when they were toddlers. And we just learn and adapt as our children go through different phases. We go through different phases as parents. When Ashlee first came on the podcast, it was back in episode 324, and the topic of that episode was working smarter, not harder. And she had some great tips for piano students with their practicing. So I hope you'll go back and listen to Ashlee's long interview, and I'll have that linked up in today's show notes. But I just enjoyed getting to visit with her from a more of a personal standpoint about sharing parenting things that we would like to do over, maybe a little misstep. And I love your transparency, Ashlee. Thank you for sharing that with us. And piano parents, I would love to hear how things are going with you. Is there some do-over that we can help you dust off and pick up and try again with? You can send me a DM on Instagram at Piano Parent Podcast. Of course, you're always welcome to send me an email at Shelley, Shelley, at pianoparentpodcast.com. And I promise I will answer you and try to do my best to encourage you. And if nothing else, I'm sure anything that you've done, I've probably made a bigger mistake. So we can encourage each other that way. Thanks so much for listening to these short form episodes that got us through the summer. Next week, we'll be back to our regular format. We'll be picking up with episode 345, and we're getting close to the beginning of the school year. So I've got something a little practical that would be smart for all of us to kind of take inventory of, and I'll be sharing that next week, and I hope to see you then. Thank you so much. And that's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging around all the way to the end. If you haven't done so already, this would be a great time for you to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcast player is, hit subscribe so you will be the first to receive next week's episode. I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Piano Parent Podcast, and you could just email me, Shelley at pianoparentpodcast.com.